Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to News Central TV. My name is Mazino. The top stories this hour. President Tinubu addresses Nigerians, reaffirms commitment to improving the nation's future, and citizens gather in Lagos, Abuja over high cost of living. And in South Africa, South African president honors repatriated remains of apartheid-era heroes. Details coming up shortly. Now we begin the news with President Bola Tinubu's address to Nigerians on the Independence Day anniversary. President Bola Tinubu has announced a 30-day national conference dedicated to addressing the challenges faced by Nigerian youth. Speaking during his 64th Independence anniversary broadcast, the president said the conference would serve as a platform to tackle the diverse issues confronting young people in the country. Tinubu reiterated that his administration is committed to harnessing the creative energy of the nation's youth by building a brighter future.
October 1st, 2024, Nigeria celebrates its 64th Independence Day, marking over 6 decades since gaining freedom from British colonial rule. In a nationwide broadcast, President Bola Tinubu reflected on the nation's journey and reassured Nigerians that their concerns are being heard amid these challenging times. He recognized the economic and social difficulties many Nigerians are grappling with, but reaffirmed his administration's commitment to addressing these issues with long-term solutions.
Central concern of our people today is the high cost of living, especially food costs. This concern is shared by many around the globe as prices and the cost of living continue to rise worldwide. The economy is undergoing the necessary reforms and retooling to serve us better and more sustainably. If we do not correct the physical misalignment that led to the current economic downturn, our country will face an uncertain future and the peril of unimaginable consequences.
The president highlighted key monetary policies aimed at stabilizing the economy, emphasizing the government's strides in reducing tax burdens on citizens.
The Federal Executive Council approved the Economic Stabilization Bill, which will now be transmitted to the National Assembly. This transformative bill will make our business environment more friendly, stimulate investment, and reduce the tax burden on businesses and workers once they are passed into law. We inherited a reserve of over 33 billion 16 months ago. Since then, we have paid back the inherited forex backlog of 7 billion. We have cleared the ways and means debt of over 30 trillion naira. We have reduced the debt service ratio from 97% to 68%.
He also celebrated Nigerians' intellectual and cultural contributions, pointing to achievements in arts, science, technology, and infrastructure. On national security, Tinubu noted that substantial progress has been made, although challenges remain.
On the security front, I am happy to announce to you, my compatriots, that our administration is winning the war on terror and banditry. Our target is to eliminate all threats of Boko Haram, banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and the scourge of all forms of violent extremism. Within 1 year, our government has eliminated many Boko Haram and bandit commanders faster than ever.
Tinubu announced a 30-day youth conference designed to address the unique challenges young Nigerians face.
As we work to overcome the challenges of the day, we remain mindful of next generation as we seek to galvanize their creative energy towards a better future. We lead today with the future we wish to bequeath to our children in focus, recognizing that we cannot design a future that belongs to them without making them its architects. Considering this, I am pleased to announce the gathering of a national youth conference. This conference will be a platform to address the diverse challenges and opportunities confronting our young people.
The president assured citizens that as the country moves forward, his administration would remain closely connected to the people, pledging continued support in overcoming obstacles and fostering a more prosperous future for all Nigerians. In Lagos for News Central, Chidinma Ona.
Now let's take more news on the Independence Day anniversary. Nigeria's nationwide assembly, or the Nigerian National Assembly, as a principal legislative institution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has had a long history of institutional evolution dating back to the colonial era. In this special report, News Central reflects on the trajectory of the parliament from independence until date. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu reports.
From what began as an instrument of British colonial administration to an institution that enjoys some measure of limited sovereignty. Reorganized in the 1960 Independence Constitution with Section 36 of the law saying, and I quote, "There shall be a Parliament of the Federation which shall consist of Her Majesty, a Senate, and a House of Representatives. Her Majesty was represented by the Governor General." Since then, the Nigerian legislative institutions blossomed and increased in number, size, and power as colonization withered away, ushering true federalism in 1963.
By the 1960 Constitution, we had a National Assembly comprising of the Senate, the House of Representatives, and incidentally also, as stated in the Constitution, the Queen of England, who was the head of state, as well, by the 1960 Constitution.
Prior to independence, there was a semblance of a legislature, that was headed by the first president of the Federation, the late Nnamdi Azikiwe.
The growth and development of the National Assembly is as a result of synergy between the civil society, the media, and the parliament, as well as consistent capacity building expected to strengthen all the legislative institutes and their affiliates.
This started as a policy outfit, policy organ of the National Assembly in 2006, actually. And then later it was made an institute standing on its own by an Act of Parliament of 2011, which has subsequently been amended. Now the institute is the think tank of the National Assembly. And if you understand what the think tank means, it means that all the technical works of the National Assembly are within our purview, and we have been able to deliver, name it, call it, policy advisory services rendered to the National Assembly, talking about, drafting bills. This year alone, we've drafted in hundreds bills that were drafted for the National Assembly.
And it may interest you to know that the Institute has since, a long time ago surpassed even this mandate. Like I was saying to you, we now train legislators across, Africa. We train West Africa. We've had the Ghanaian, several parliaments have come here, including the ECOWAS parliament. They have come here to understudy. We've provided training for them across a broad gamut of, a range of issues and aspects of parliamentary procedures.
At the moment, Nigeria's National Assembly can boast of decades of existence with milestone achievements since independence.
You will discover that we have had enormous legislative intervention coming by way of lawmaking since 1999. What do you want to talk about? Just name it. Every part of our country's life has been touched, by one law or the other, made by the National Assembly. Are you talking of climate change, for instance? The National Assembly has intervened. Are you talking about proceeds of crime, anti-corruption, and so on and so forth? one of the earliest laws that the National Assembly made were two major laws, and they are still very effective even now. Talking of the ICPC Act and, of course, the EFCC Act. All these two acts are meant to, strengthen the fight against corruption. And that goes on to even the Electoral Act.
I think as an institution, the legislature has grown in leaps and bounds, no doubt. I think our legislators have grown more adept in the act of lawmaking, understanding the processes. And we have, whether Nigerians appreciate it or not, I know it's difficult to appreciate anything with the legislators and legislators. We have a fairly sophisticated, legislature.
If you look at generally in terms of laws, you could give them a little pass mark in terms of enactment of laws, but it is different. There's a different ball game enacting laws and also exercising the oversight over the implementation of those laws.
Despite these achievements, many believe there is still a lot of work needed to be done to get the parliament to live up to its responsibilities.
I can tell you that for oversight, National Assembly has to struggle for the one major gap. It's not good, it's not fair for National Assembly to be depending on agencies that they have appointed to fund their oversight operations. And you know what that means?
People unjustly, I think, brand them as, all sorts of things. But they do that from a distance, not knowing exactly what these people grapple with on a daily basis. I still think more funds will avail the legislature, better performance. I think they should be more exposed to best practices. In other words, legislative exchange visits, are still required. Let them go to the more mature democracies and learn the art of lawmaking.
In terms of representation of the people, they have not been able to bring the views, the desires, the wishes and aspirations of the people up to the proper stage where it will be reflected in government policy, legislation, and the implementation of those policies and legislation. So in essence, if you look at the state of our democracy today, the failure of the legislature in being up to date in the discharge of their functions is to a great extent responsible for why we are where we are today.
It's 64 years of independence in Nigeria with a strong bicameral legislation. It is expected that more investment will be done in terms of innovations so as to continue to strengthen the nation's legislative institutions. Happy 64th Independence Anniversary, Nigeria. In Abuja, for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
Now moving on to security matters. As Nigeria celebrates its 64th independence anniversary, the nation faces unprecedented security challenges. Heightened banditry, kidnappings for ransom, and also attacks from armed groups have overshadowed the country's years of struggles for development in various regions. News Central's Umaru Kirawa assesses Nigeria's security challenges and possible solutions after 64 years.
A happy and historic moment to Nigerians, a day they got independence from their colonial masters, Britain. It used to be a smooth sail for the people to traverse from any part of the country to another without fear. Besides the Nigerian Civil War, which lasted from 1967 to 1970, political, ethnic and religious tensions, the Niger Delta militancy, characterized by pipeline vandalism, kidnappings among others, as well as farmer herder crisis have continued to be a major source of security threat to the nation.
I'm very concerned because I even have a victim which was kidnapped last semester while going back to Abuja. So the government, especially our government, supposed to put hand in this kidnapping of it. And the securities on the road, it's not tight, so they should tighten the securities for us to be safe.
The high rate of kidnappings throughout Nigeria by criminal bandit groups who fearlessly boast of their activities on various social media networks remains a million-dollar question on security intelligence and response.
It is unfortunate that at 64, the level of security in Nigeria is continuously deteriorating. This is a very sad development. It is no longer news that people can no longer travel from all parts of the country without fear of being attacked, kidnapped, or robbed by some elements, bad elements in the society. And it is sad that we continue to prioritize this as a campaign promise.
A professor of history from the University of Maiduguri in Nigeria's northeast speaks on the current happenings and where the country got it wrong.
In those days, in the pre-76 time, the regional institutions are important. But you say that they don't have any to do governance, they are not relevant, and what have you, had now given us this, has contributed to this vulnerability in security challenges. You said there is free movement of labor, free movement of people with this ECOWAS, that even if there is ECOWAS, we allow people to move, but people have to register their presence.
Although Nigeria has been ranked as the 8th country by the Global Terrorism Index, the nation has been enlisted for 5 consecutive times as the 3rd most terrorized nation, occasioned by the over 13 years of Boko Haram that led to the death of thousands and displacement of over 2 million people. Bringing an end to this disturbing situation has been the major campaign promises for succeeding administrations in Nigeria.
For too many years, Nigeria has faced dangerous, shadowy enemies whose sole aim is to overturn our democratic and peaceful way of life. Despite their efforts, we hold to the vision of a nation stronger yet but just, prosperous yet compassionate, dynamic yet tolerant and inclusive. But I assure you, the hope is here.
Meanwhile, one security concern, particularly in the northeast, recovering from the ashes of more than a decade insurgency, is the massive surrender of Boko Haram terrorists. The government says rehabilitating and reintegrating them is the only option. Improving the security situation in Nigeria, according to analysts, requires a holistic approach.
How do we elect our leaders? The election, the process leading to the election itself is corruption, is corrupt. People are getting their ways of leadership through what? Money. Money politics. This has to be downplayed. The system whereby you even elect people based on what credentials, based on what capacities, what are their own qualifications is very important.
We must revisit our traditional institutions, empower them to the extent that they have that power, that prerogative to interrogate any stranger or any strange face they are not familiar with in a community. And the Borno model has worked very well, because when Boko Haram was at the peak, the CJTF was a model to reckon with. The CJTF collaborated. Every youth as at that time belonged to the Civilian Joint Task Force, and we saw how this has been able to address our security concerns.
With a population estimated at over 232 million people as at July 2024, according to the United Nations, Nigeria continues to struggle for the restoration of peace within its borders 64 years after independence. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
And now to discuss this further, we have joining us security analyst Chidi Omeje. Chidi, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So let's first start by asking if you saw the president's speech from this morning. Do you agree with the president, President Bola Tinubu, his assertion that during his administration, they've won the war on terror and banditry?
Well, by the way, happy independence.
Well, thank you very much.
I listened to the president, but I'm not sure. I think that would be a very bogus claim on his part. We have not won any war. I mean, the war is raging, as a matter of fact. I mean, we have, various theaters of operations across the country. In the Northeast, you have, anti-terrorism, operations being conducted by the military. You also have anti-banditry in the Northwest. You have same in North Central. Of course, we have military deployed in the southeast to wage the those who are trying to secede. Then, of course, in the south, you have operations going on to prevent attack on a maritime asset. Same thing happens in the southwest. So across the country, you have issues of insecurity. So you cannot tell me that we have not won anything. And the thing is, we tend to confuse what I would call Pyrrhic victory to sustainable victory. What we have is you have the fact that the military has been able to contain some of these infractions here and there. That does not translate to the fact that you have won the entire fight against security, because internal security challenge in Nigeria is quite organic. Is alive and well. So as far as I'm concerned, we have not won any war. The war is ongoing and raging. So that's what I think.
Okay, so Mr. Omeje, if we were to take apart insecurity and use one unit, let's say kidnapping, for instance, how effective has law enforcement agencies been in addressing kidnappings for ransom and also banditry across the country?
Yeah, I mean, we must give kudos to our fighting forces who have been able to somehow contain the kidnapping enterprise going on. But it has not stopped. As we speak today, so many of our compatriots, indeterminable number of our compatriots, are still in the hands of these kidnappers in different forests and sanctuaries of the bandits. So it's a concerning security challenge, which I think that much as we give kudos to our especially the military, who have been able to show exceptional commitment in internal security operations, we can't say it's uhuru yet. We are still blighted by the scourge of kidnapping. Let me tell you, if you are a road user, if you're traveling on the express, if you're going from south to west, from east to south, east to north, north to south, north to west, you have the heart on your hands until you get to a destination, because kidnappers are prowling on the express, be it along Kogi Expressway, be it towards the Enugu axis, be it towards the Ondo axis. We have the same issues of kidnapping. So kidnapping is alive and thriving. But like I said, what we have is the military, the security forces led by the military, trying to deal with the symptoms. So we are dealing with the symptoms. We're not dealing with the disease. So that's the situation. So until you deal with the disease, that's when you think. Well, that's how we can say you have actually cured the ailment, right?
Yes. Now, Chidi, I do agree with you. Traveling in Nigeria by road is quite worrisome. Being someone myself who travels a lot, I actually find it very, very worrisome. Well, now, taking a look at that, and if we remember that the Vice President had his speech at the United Nations General Assembly, where he asked for support from other nations when it comes to Africa, Nigeria in particular here, in security, how much of a role do you think international partners can play in supporting Nigeria's security efforts?
Of course, you know that the security challenge we have in the country is actually internal security challenges. It's not like a cross-border problem. It's not like international crisis that we have on our hands. We have domestic, essentially, majorly domestic grown crises. But the bulk of our security challenges are consequence of bad governance. So yes, of course, we need collaboration, we need partnership in terms of probably technology, be able to acquire technologies, be able to buy platforms and equipment to fight terrorism. Because there was a time when Nigeria was blacklisted. We can't even procure military hardware because of some considerations, probably because of our human rights abuses and stuff, or for whatever reason. But I think probably his call is to sensitize the international community to say, look, please give us access to procure technology, give us access to get weapons. But I'm not sure he's asking for boot on the ground, because Nigeria, as it is now, 90% of our security challenge is internally generated, and like I said, they are all tied to bad governance. So the international community will not come and give us good governance. So if we know if we want to tell us all the truth, we must look inwards to see how we can use good governance paradigm to solve our problems, because it is actually poverty, it's actually hunger. the situation, that have compelled a lot of people to see crime as an option. So but when people are hungry and angry and jobless and hopeless, crime becomes very attractive. So it's not about getting international community to partner to do whatever the VP was asking for. It's about the VP leading the charge of good governance. That's how we should start.
Mr. Chidi, thank you very much for that. Now, boots on ground versus pen on paper regarding policies. Our problems, like you say, is not really boots on ground. It's about the policies and governance. However, what kind of strategies would you suggest? Very shortly, because we are out of time. What strategies for Nigerian security status? For a long-term picture, I advocate for good governance as a panacea. But then for the immediate, to solve this, to deal with the symptoms of the security challenge you are seeing, how do we deal with them? Probably, first of all, to get military, security, intelligence, and response agencies to work in synergy more, so that the incidents of interagency rivalry and suspicion must not exist at all. Then, of course, the government, they have to, first of all, the key thing is political will. Even if the military guys are on top of the situation, without political will, they can't get result. Sometimes, the military guys are hamstrung because they don't have the political backing to carry out, fundamental, issue they want to do. Sometimes they will be discouraged, or rather be hamstrung by the fact that they don't have the liberty, the platform, the latitude to do whatever they want to do. So political will is key. Then, of course, there has to be funding. We have to increase more our funding to make sure that we increase our boots on ground, still in the water, and then eyes in the sky. If you know what I mean. Mr. Chidi, want to say thank you very much for joining us joining us with your very insightful comments. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks for having me, and happy Independence once more.
Thank you once again. Now let's take a very short break, and when we get back, Nigerians in South Africa are calling for service delivery on Independence Day. We'll let you know more about this when we get back from this short break. Welcome back. In the business sector, Nigeria discovered crude oil in 1956, a development that would change the country's economic trajectory and position it as the leader of the continent. The discovery of oil in Olebiri, in what is now Bayelsa State, was touted as a game changer and the keystone that would support Nigeria's aspirations after independence. But even if oil, in all its splendor, did provide prosperity, it also sparked an over-reliance that caused other industries, most notably agriculture, to collapse. Nigeria is currently battling to diversify its economy and resolve the divisive problems of resource control. Now, News Central business editor Nasir Agbalaya compiled this report looking at the country's economic trajectory since independence.
The discovery of crude oil in Nigeria's present-day Bayelsa brought about prosperity to the nation, but it also clouded the managers of Nigeria's Commonwealth into forsaking the initial geese that had been laying the golden egg, agriculture.
The discovery of oil in 1958 did not exactly become an albatross on the economy until towards the early 1970s, when we had the first global increase in crude oil prices around 1973. Obviously, the influx of funding and capital from the oil and gas sector meant that it became the largest part of the Nigerian economy. At some point, remember that oil and gas was actually contributing up to 50% of our GDP.
As oil revenues increased, agriculture and other sectors fell into neglect. Oil boom led to what economists call Dutch disease, where a single commodity's success causes a country's other industries to decline, instead of nurturing the agricultural legacy that had sustained Nigeria for long. The government shifted focus solely to oil. By the 1980s, oil accounted for over 90% of export earnings and a significant portion of the national GDP.
Whenever oil price goes low, Nigeria will shout, oh, we're going to diversify. Immediately the oil prices pick up. That is the end of diversification. We go back, we end it. Up till now, crude oil remains the largest source of probably even up to 80-90% of our foreign exchange earnings as we speak. So what are we talking about?
Before oil, Nigeria's economy was diverse. Groundnut, cocoa, and palm oil exports put the country on the global economic map. However, the shift towards oil relegated these sectors to the background, leading to massive unemployment and rural to urban migration. Industrialization slowed and Nigeria became dependent on imported food and manufactured goods.
The first thing that obviously drove our over-reliance was the sheer size of the oil and gas industry relative to the Nigerian economy. At some point, oil was 98% of Nigeria's exports and probably about 50-60% of government revenues. So now think about it this way. As a businessman, if you were running a business and you had a particular product that was providing 98% of your external earnings, the tendency is you are going to focus your attention on it. It's what we call the law of comparative advantage in economics.
Diversification has been a challenge for us, and for so many reasons. First and foremost is what I call inertia. For most people, when you already have a cash cow, in a manner of speaking, oil revenue is like a cash cow for the Federation. Having the will to step away from that and then focus on other sources of revenue, it's something that not everybody has the strength to do so.
However, the road to diversification is fraught with challenges: infrastructural deficits, corruption, and over-reliance on oil revenues continue to impede progress. The lack of political will to fully implement diversification policies has also been a major stumbling block.
The impact was, people just started to focus more on the rent-seeking part of the economy. And that's one part we need to talk about, Nazam. What happened is that because it paid people more to do business with government, your path to riches was more assured if you were doing business with government. What happened was that entrepreneurs started to pivot from providing goods and services to the third parties or to the economy, and it became more like government rent seekers. So everyone became a briefcase businessman that flew to Abuja to chase a contract.
You're aware of the energy transition drive and what's going on globally. Access to financing has also become a challenge for us. All those has then mitigated against. So we are now at a pace where we are even struggling to increase our oil production, talk less of being able to diversify away from oil. But we are at the stage where we are actually trying to ramp up production first. We can't even meet up to the OPEC quotas that we have at the moment before we then diversify. Thankfully, government has identified natural gas as one of the key pivots that we can use to sort of both satisfy our energy transition drives at the same time grow other sectors of the economy. But that again is also capital intensive. It has not been easy. The fund flow hasn't just been coming the way we want it to be. But I think if government just keeps pushing, I think perchance with time we should be able to gather a bit of momentum in that regard.
Over-reliance on oil has led to the decay of pre-independence industries, while diversification efforts remain difficult to achieve. As Nigeria looks to the future, the politics of resource control will play a critical role in determining how best to manage its natural wealth. The country's ability to navigate these challenges will shape its economic trajectory for decades to come.
Now, as Nigeria celebrates 64 years of independence on Tuesday, that's today, October 1st, 2024, thousands of citizens gather in the nation's economic and political capitals, Lagos and Abuja, respectively, to protest high living and energy costs in Africa's most populous nation. Protesters gathered at the Utako area in Abuja, the country's federal capital territory, waving the Nigerian green, white, green flag and banners with various inscriptions such as "End Bad Governance," diaspora voting, end high living costs, amongst others. In Lagos, around the state capital in Ikeja, the situation was the same as youth besieged the popular Ikeja underbridge area with vehicular movements at a standstill on a day already declared a public holiday by the government for the celebration of Nigeria's independence. Both in Lagos and Abuja, scores of security agents were seen on alert at the protest locations where they maintained a respectable distance from the demonstrators. Now, coming up, South Africa's Ramaphosa honors repatriated remains of apartheid-era heroes. We'll tell you more after this very short break. Welcome back. Outside Nigeria now and in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa over the weekend led and officiated a homecoming ceremony in Pretoria to honor the remains of liberation struggle fighters who returned to their families for a final farewell on home soil. These 42 South African freedom fighters died in Zambia and Zimbabwe during the apartheid era. The ceremony was attended by Zambian High Commissioner to South Africa, Mazuba Munze, and Zimbabwe Ambassador to South Africa, David Hamadzipsebi, along with government officials, ordinary South Africans, families, and friends. Now, the repatriation of the freedom fighters remains from Zambia and Zimbabwe form part of the Resistance and Liberation Heritage Route project aimed at commemorating, celebrating, educating, promoting, preserving, and conserving a durable testament of South Africa's road to freedom. News Central's Bongani Sisiba has more.
In a moving culmination of decades of longing, today marks a historic moment for South Africa. These are the remains of esteemed heroes who fought the struggles far from home. They have returned to their motherland after years of exile in Zimbabwe and Zambia. These brave individuals dedicated their lives to the fight for the freedom, courageously standing for what they believed in. Today, they are not just mere legends, but are home returned to rest among their people, their families, and their ancestors.
We are returning them to the land of their birth. We restore them to their families and to their people. And we're pleased that their families are here because through this we are also paying tribute to their families. Families who went through a lot of anguish and pain and depression and sadness over the years. And we pay tribute to you all for having gone through all that, and in fact, you sacrificed immensely.
Now these brave warriors are set free from the shackles of displacement to where they will forever rest, embraced by the rich soil of South Africa.
So this moment is a reflection of our national values, respect for human dignity, but more important, the recognition of the sacrifice, and on the other side, the preservation of our heritage.
Zambia and Zimbabwe also acknowledged the relationship they have with South Africa.
Today's ceremony therefore reminds us of our two countries and peoples' friendship, solidarity, and shared sacrifices in the fight against apartheid and colonial oppression, and for independence and liberty. It also reminds us that our destinies are intertwined.
We are also extremely humbled to have collaborated with our brothers and sisters from South Africa in undertaking the repatriation and restitution process.
Home at last, and the memory will linger forever. South Africa thanked all the countries that took care of these heroes who fought for the freedom the country enjoys today.
It will be remiss of us as the ANC today not to mention the indelible role played by the countries where these comrades' mortal remains were repatriated from, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Zambia, led by President Kenneth Kaunda, gave home to the ANC and other liberation movements, providing for ANC headquarters, training camps, and the education of our children and young people, It did so while still busy rebuilding their own country.
The neighboring countries, which were then called frontline states, sacrificed on our behalf, and at times bearing the brunt of attacks from the apartheid regime during the cross-border raid.
Today, as families, friends, and fellow South Africans gather, they are not just mourning the loss of these brave fighters, they are celebrating their lives, their dedication, and their spirit. At the Freedom Park Heritage Site in Pretoria, for News Central, Bongani Siziba.
Still ahead, critically low water levels hit Amazon River in Colombia. We'll tell you more after this short break. Join us then. The director of the Colombian Risk Management Unit says the low water levels of the Amazon River is critical and the lowest it has been in decades. Colombian authorities fear the consequences of the drought will be great, affecting access to drinking water for the region's population, as South America faces a severe and widespread drought. The lack of water particularly impacts indigenous communities who depend on the river for food and transport. The river, the world's largest by volume, and which also flows through parts of Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Guyana, French Guyana, and Suriname, has been hard hit by the drought that has seen wildfires spread across the continent.
Estas comunidades, su único medio de transporte es el río. Al secarse estos afluentes, pues se ven completamente incomunicados. Aquí en Puerto Nariño vimos como, por ejemplo, hay un colegio internado que pues tuvo que detener sus actividades porque no había forma de tener ese transporte escolar. Pues los pronósticos hasta hoy han sido esquivos. Y pues seguramente en la temporada de lluvias volverá a aumentar el cauce, pero las consecuencias van a ser cada vez mayores. Así que pues tenemos que buscar soluciones de largo plazo para estas comunidades, por ejemplo, para poderlas abastecer de manera permanente a lo largo del año de agua potable.
Pero sí se ha afectado los frutos, los plátanos ya no son iguales, las cosechas ya no salen en la misma época, el calor es bastante, ha habido mucha humedad, mucho brumo, o sea, entonces...
And now sports. Remo Stars forward Alex Oyoa is set for a spell on the sidelines due to injury. Now, Oyoa picked up a muscle lace injury during Remo Stars' 2-1 win over Rangers in a matchday 4 encounter in Ikenne on Sunday. The former Rivers United forward scored Remo Stars' opening goal of the game. According to reports, Oyoa is expected to be out for 2 weeks. Oyoa has featured in all Remo Stars' 4 games. Remo Stars will take on Kwara United in their next league game. And that's all the news we have for you this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the big stories that we brought your way. President Tinubu addresses Nigerians, reaffirms commitments to improving the nation's future, and citizens gather in Lagos, Abuja over high cost of living. We also told you that South African president has honored repatriated remains of apartheid-era heroes. Now, do remember you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Able TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino. Appeal.